Hey guys, Sleepy Reader here. This is the first of my 31 mini vlogs that I hope to do in 31 days, although I already goofed up. Yesterday when I announced it, I thought today was the 1st of September. Today's the 2nd of September. So I'm already one behind, and I thought September had 31 days, which I certainly should have known better. It has 30 days, but I will still do 31 vlogs. I may do two in one. I may do two today because I already missed a day, and I will keep going until I've done 31. They're going to be mini vlogs, so just pretty much anything that pops into my mind that I happen to be thinking about. Trying not to put pressure on myself. Today I'm going to talk about, well, mostly about Alex Toth in this book called Genius Isolated: the life and art of Alex Toth. It comes from IDW, and it's a giant hardback trade with loaded with art reproduction. It's kind of like not quite a coffee table, like a connoisseur's book plus a biography of Alex Toth. And in fact, it's going to be 3 volumes when it's done. They show maybe they put out the other books. I'll have to look because I got this out of the library, and I definitely would want to get the other ones out of the library. So there's going to be 3 books this size, all devoted to Alex Toth, an artist that most of us probably have only seen a little bit of his artwork. I'm guessing, unless other people are way ahead of me. This is I'm always obsessing about what things cost, but there you go. And I got it from the library, so I didn't have to pay for it. This is a $50 book. Here it is compared to a hardback from DC, which has a list price of $40. So, and presumably, if I wanted to buy this, I could get it for a nice discount online. So this IDW puts out incredibly nice books. And if you were to compare the binding or anything to this DC book, it blows it out of the water. This is what a really nice book should be. It's got one of those little markers and stuff. I'd be tempted to buy it myself. The only thing is, looking over it, at least, this is the early art of Alex Toth. I can see why they call him a genius, but I'm not excited to read the stories. It's nice to glance at the art, but for whatever reason, maybe because they're just kind of old-fashioned and in their subject matter, but I think it's also something about the art. I look at it and it looks kind of cool, and I can see what they're saying about, how much he influenced some other artists. I particularly see, the art of all the Silver Age DC kind of artists reflected in this artwork that came out in the 40s and early 50s. He has this sort of marvelous use of blacks that maybe we're kind of used to artists being able to do now. But I'm just not drawn in wanting to read it. So I don't picture this as a book that I would, go over and over and over for. So it's fine for me, it's fine getting out of the library. If you love Alex Toth, this book would be a bargain, given all the incredible stuff in it. The story of Alex Toth's life is very interesting, and it does kind of convince me that he was kind of this genius who was not very good at the other things in life besides his artistic genius. And there's no way to tell where that artistic genius came from. It just seemed almost magical, like genius sometimes seems. And that makes it a fascinating story because he's kind of a secret genius, a genius inside this world that maybe the practitioners of the art of comics all know about Alex Toth, but most people don't. He never became famous, and it makes him in some ways a more fascinating genius than like Pablo Picasso or dare I say it, Jack Kirby. Although a book like this about Jack Kirby would be 3 books like this about Jack Kirby would be fantastic too. It's kind of funny to devote these beautiful books to someone that almost no one knows anything about. And I don't know why one fantasizes about what one would be like, what would I be like if I were an artistic genius? You see movies about Pablo Picasso or read about Ernest Hemingway or whoever, and they're always jerks. And I guess even Albert Einstein was a jerk to his family. And and I have a feeling Alex Toth, was not a great father and not a great husband. But do geniuses always have to be that way? I don't know. I was watching a bunch of interviews with Gene Colan, someone who I think is another, fairly genius, fairly influential comic book artist. Anyway, seeing a bunch of interviews with him on YouTube, and in each one he mentioned his regret, because in all of them he was an elderly man, his regret of having not spent more time with his family, that he was so obsessed and involved in his comic book art and comic book career that his children just grew up and he left before he realized what had happened. And of course that's different than being crappy to your family. And from all I've read about Jack Kirby, I mean, his family loved and adored him. So I don't know if all geniuses, and I don't know where you draw the line of what a genius is. But certainly all really successful people have to spend a huge amount of time not with their family. So that's the kind of thing, and it's kind of funny thinking about geniuses who aren't famous. How many more geniuses are there out there in all kinds of fields that we don't know about, who have screwed up their careers but still done stuff that is brilliant. I will, if my library gets them, read the other volumes of this because I don't know enough about. I know that Alex Toth had worked in animation and was involved in Space Ghost, amongst other things. So I want to read more about that and find out more about what happened to him. And maybe there was some profit to his genius for him. I'm not sure. There was also, I think, the pleasure of doing things right. I think he cared most about doing what he did right. In here, a lot of what he did was for Western publishing. So it's no wonder most of us haven't heard of him. Western publishing just did comic books based on whatever was a popular TV show at the time. So he did lots of comic books based on TV shows from the 50s that no one would ever remember. I'm trying to find an example here. As I flip through it, I'm not seeing it because they're not really reprinting his Western comics ones so much. But I guess Zorro is the most famous one that he did, and people, I guess, like they remembered Karl Barks for these great Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck comics. They were the people who were reading at the time noticed the great Zorro artist. Even on these, they look really nice, but I'm just not drawn into the story. I don't know. I guess that's maybe my fault. Or it may be reflective on why Alex Toth never became more well known. I watched, sort of on the same subject, a few weeks ago I watched a bunch of biographical movies. One was on the rock band Anvil, and then on Harlan Ellison, and then one on Frank Frazetta. And there was one other. Anyway, Frank Frazetta, in my mind, was a genius, and it sounds like he managed a lifestyle where he did spend a lot of time with his family, and he managed to do his paintings in these short, gotta-make-the-deadline kind of bursts, and then was at home with his kids more than a regular dad or parent nowadays would be. Harlan Ellison, I don't know whether he was a genius. Is an a-hole, because I have met him in person, and that was clearly, it was an a-hole, and to me kind of pitiful, kind of desperate for some kind of attention, and going about it in really pitiful ways to my mind, which was a huge blow to me because as a teenager I worshipped Harlan Ellison stories. I went from Ray Bradbury to Harlan Ellison. Harlan Ellison was like the hip, younger Ray Bradbury hero of mine when I was a kid. And then I met him when I was about 25 at a party, and it was a huge, huge letdown. But this Harlan Ellison movie, the Frank Frazetta movie, and other... I saw a movie, a documentary about Grant Morrison. All of those were hagiographies, documentaries or books that are biographies of someone. I probably mispronounced the word hagiography, but it means it's just written to praise, or filmed to praise that person. So I felt both, particularly like with all three, with Frank Frazetta and Harlan Ellison and Grant Morrison, that I didn't really know the real story, because they were just giving us the story that those people want us to know. Harlan Ellison did a little bit of stuff, doing his shtick where he's a bad boy, so that's some bad things about him, I suppose, but not really. And an example, I think, of where it's done right and not a hagiography is the movie Crumb, which I haven't seen in a number of years. But as I remember, in that, there were people who were detractors of Robert Crumb, along with people who loved Robert Crumb being interviewed in the movie. And there, Robert Crumb himself was a character who was much more willing to put himself down and present himself in a bad light. And interestingly, that movie was filmed by a fellow artist and friend of Robert Crumb, but probably he knew that Crumb was okay with him doing a movie that made him look bad, or potentially look bad. And I think you get a much more interesting view of the artist that way. And certainly with Alex Toth, they worship his artwork. There's no criticism of his artwork here, as far as I can tell, but they are critical of him as a human being. And so it makes for a much more interesting portrait. And I feel weird sometimes talking about genius in comic books, or even genius in science fiction like Harlan Ellison, because those aren't the kinds of geniuses that society gives a pass to. Society does not say, well, it's all right for a genius comic book artist to be an asshole. They do say it's all right for a genius musician to be an asshole, or a genius fine artist, Jackson Pollock. It's all right for him to have been an asshole. Certainly all right for Pablo Picasso, who almost has to be an asshole. That's the whole point of him. People have done songs about it. Anyway, for a mini vlog, I've gone on long. So that'll probably be a pattern here. Hope you guys, those of you in the U.S., hope you had a great Labor Day weekend. And everyone else, hope you're having a good beginning to your week. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.